All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our channel. Today, Asha and I have an amazing guest here with us, David Hayward, the Naked Pastor. One word. He will always say that. Make sure not to search the words separately. For anyone who's new here, Asha and I have a series that was geared towards people who are in or coming out of or have left the ICOC or ICC, the International Churches of Christ. I also do a lot of content surrounding narcissism and healing from that. So basically, it's just a lot of education, validation, and empowerment for people to live their own lives outside of coercive control. And so, yes, we are excited to have you here. If you're not already following, please go ahead and hit subscribe, turn your notifications on. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. But we just love to keep it candid, love to have a good time and talk about a lot of things that people are not necessarily saying out loud. So before we dive in and let David speak for himself, Ashin, I wanted to share how we came across his platform and why we wanted to have him on. So for me, I decided to start deconstructing. I didn't know I was deconstructing. I didn't know what deconstruction was, but just a lot of the sirens inside of me, the questions inside of me started getting so loud when it came to the way I had become accustomed to worshiping God and, going to church. And, for those of you who watched mine and Asha's first video, you'll know we got in this book club together, which was kind of like a scandal in the church, I guess, because it was a group of people getting together, reading a unapproved book and asking questions. And I don't know which of us found the page first, but we saw all of his art, his cartoons, the different, videos he would make with his anecdotes. And I just loved that there was a mix of being candid and being thought-provoking and also being humorous, like to just not take everything so seriously. And I love that he was so unashamed. Just like, here it is, take it or leave it. And you'll even see some people, their feathers get a little ruffled in the comments. And I love that David is so welcoming of that. And he's, we'll talk about it more, but he's like, hey, I'm not here to tell you what to think. You can think whatever you want. And I just love that because that's even very different kind of in the influencer space as well, where so many people are just really seeking for people to agree with them. Like, if you don't like it, you can get off my page. But he's like, that's fine. So anyway, that's me. It's been very healing, I think, to see someone so, again, unashamed, putting their thoughts out there, because the space that I have been in, it's like, you can be hesitant even to voice your question, let alone for it to not be a question, but a statement of, this is what I think. And so it's been great to kind of have that model and even introduce questions I didn't know I had yet. So yes, I'm very excited that he's here. We're always sending each other your posts, David, like sharing them in our Instagram DMs or texting to the group thread. So this is really amazing. You're definitely one of our heroes, even though you'll probably be like, no, like, don't make me a hero, but we appreciate you.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on your show today. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh. So is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead, Asha.
We are so happy you're here as well. For me, your cartoons during this time of deconstruction, when I didn't know I was deconstructing, like kind of took my breath away. There were cartoons specifically to what I was thinking, what I was battling with. And, with cognitive dissonance, especially being in a controlling environment, you have these conflicting thoughts come up a lot. However, you resolve them by excusing them, coming up with an explanation for them. And your cartoons made my brain say, no, no, you can't do that anymore. look at this. This is very specific, right? And so I talked in our very first YouTube with me and Nikita about just kind of like my process of deconstructing and how a big part of it was, we were in the middle of the pandemic, and I was so concerned about my Christianity because I wasn't doing as much. And so, I was just frantic. How do I keep me and my family safe? But how do I still be a Christian? And the pressure was on from, the organization. And I just remember having these panic attacks and these breakdowns. Like, is this what a relationship with God is supposed to be like? And I kept thinking of Jesus saying, I never knew you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think it's supposed to be this complicated. All I want to do is have a relationship with God. But the expectations are this, and the Bible does say this, but this doesn't make sense. And then I came across, and I can't remember how, like I said, I can't remember who showed us your account first or if it was the algorithm, but I saw, yes, thank you, Nikita, you put it up there. I saw this, and I was like, I don't know if I had anything in my hand, I dropped it. It was just like, this is how I feel. All I ever wanted was a relationship with God. But the Bible says this, and my church says this, and they were like chains. And I just knew that this isn't what I saw in Romans 8, like the fruits of the Spirit, all these things. It was just pure anxiety all the time. Mm-hmm. Then I started allowing myself to have thoughts, acknowledging contradictions. And then I saw this one. And I was like, this is literally what I've said I feel like is happening in my organization. But you immediately have to say, no, this is you, Asha. You just are faithless. You are just not, trusting God. How dare you have these thoughts? And I was like, this is what I feel. Like, shame is always the go-to. And I've talked about that in previous videos. But this cartoon, again, allowed me to have that thought and to look for it and to allow myself to observe it. And then I started to question the way the Bible was taught to me. And again, I'm like battling these thoughts. And then I saw this cartoon and I'm like, there it is. And I was like, how is this man inside of my head? What is this? And so again, I just want to say thank you, because it was very different than anything I had ever seen. It made me feel like I was not crazy, that I wasn't the only one experiencing this. And so many people in your comments were sharing how they related to this. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, I had never been a part of a church prior to being a part of ICOC. So I didn't know I was part of the evangelical space. I didn't even know that. And especially in our church, it's like, we're special. We're the only real Christians. Even people in other churches aren't Christians. We need to bring them all here. So I was so isolated. So you took away that isolation. So thank you so much. So that's my journey of becoming a fan.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So I was just going to open it up. How would you like to introduce yourself to the world, to our community?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I called myself the Naked Pastor from the very beginning. A lot of people are like, why do you call yourself Naked Pastor? Well, that's because back in 2004 or 5, when I started blogging and I was a pastor of a local church, I didn't want to just be another pastor blogger. And there were a lot out there, and blogging was at its zenith, popularity and everything. But I wanted to be naked, like totally honest and truthful. I wanted to tear back the curtain and let people see what really goes on in the church, what really goes on in the life of a pastor. I wanted to just be really, really honest and raw and real and transparent and vulnerable. And so that's why I call myself Naked Pastor. In real life, I'm a very modest person and even shy on many levels. But I wanted people to really see what really goes on, like not just the great sermons and the wonderful worship music and the premium coffee and donuts and you know, the great potlucks and the events and youth group and, style of clothes or liturgy or buildings or all that stuff. I wanted them to also see that there's conflict and doubt and fear. And then when you go even deeper and darker, there's manipulation and control. And if you go even further, there's abuse. And so I wanted to just be totally out there and totally honest about all that. And so basically my whole shtick, Naked Pastor, is just me being me. And I'm not trying to, my first goal is not to teach anybody anything. My first goal is just to be authentically me. That's my first thing, is I want the freedom to be my authentic self. And so I am that online. I'm just me being me out loud. And it's like Nikita said earlier, saying things that have never been said, or, speaking the unspoken. I was just being real about my life. And I happened to be a pastor. And I left the ministry, though, in 2010. Some argue whether I left the ministry or not, but that's another story. So I don't know. I think my cartoons just caught on. People identified with them. They related. And just like Asha said, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. There's other people out there like me. And it's a great feeling to know that your spiritual journey is normal. It's not weird, and it's not sinful or backsliding or all those things that it's labeled, and you have no reason to be ashamed to be yourself. So that's what I do, and I continue to do through my cartoons and my art and my writing and all that I do. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And it's so needed. There really is something that's so powerful and healing for people to be able to speak things out loud that are not commonly spoke out loud. That whole, I'm not crazy, I'm not alone is part of the major part of the reason that Asha and I started our series. And it's been really rewarding and fulfilling as people leave those exact words, like, oh my gosh, I feel seen, or, things like that. And so that's how it started for Asha and I to just be like, and we use the analogy, kind of the children's story, The Emperor's New Clothes. Where it's like, we can all see this, we can all think this, but we're all kind of tricking each other into continuing with this game. And so Asha and I decided, you know what, no more. We're going to speak out. But I don't think we at all were prepared for the magnitude of the responses that we would get and the different types of questions. And so even the thought of like, oh my gosh, I wonder if Naked Pastor will come on, is because of so many messages, not even in comments. Like, people will still feel so nervous that they won't even comment. They'll find our email address or our DMs and say, hey, it's scary out there. I don't know where to go. Where do you go to church now? So many people ask us, where do you go to church now? Or if I leave, I'm scared I'm going to lose everything. Or people saying, oh, I've left and I'm so lonely. And so, just really wanting to reach out and hopefully help provide. I hate to use guidance because it's almost like, no, you have to listen to yourself. But, I just feel like even hearing you talk about it, there's such a security in encouraging people to kind of build that muscle of listening to their inner voice.
Yeah. So for me, primarily it's a human issue. It's not necessarily a religious one. That need to belong is a human need.
Yeah.
It's just a basic human need to belong. And it begins in our families, right? And just that need to belong, and a lot of parents and families, and and it goes out from there, build in systems to ensure that you belong. So on the one hand, it's protected, but on the other hand, it's very controlling, because we all of a sudden realize that you need to conform and fit in order to belong. So the pressure is enormous. And so this leaks into human behavior in the religious sphere as well. But with every sphere, though, there's added ammunition, So with the church, the need to belong is strong, and that the ammunition is added of if you do leave, you never did belong,
Yes.
or if you do leave, you're rejecting God, or if you do leave, you're going to hell, or if you do leave, you're full of demons. There's all kinds of things built in, and like I try to think the best of human nature. On the one hand, it's protective. It's like you need to stay in the safety of the group. On the other hand, it's like if you don't stay, and there's all kinds of threats and warnings and shaming and guilting and everything that goes on. And I've been a victim of that, even though I was a pastor in the church. I've also been a member, and it's just built into the system. It's so strong. I get it in my own family, my birth family, and online, the pressure to, I get my wrist slapped daily, several times. I'm sure you do too. And it's all an attempt to make us fall back in line.
Yeah.
And once I recognized that years ago, and you see through that, it's almost like a revelation, and you have a choice at that point. Okay, well, I really do want to belong, so I'm going to keep playing the game, or I'm going to risk losing everything in order to be my authentic self. Let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, Nikita mentioned it earlier, but it's so healing, right? Because you realize, like you described, this whole getting your wrist slapped, a system to keep you in line. And then we stay in that system because we want to belong. But when you do, I feel, when you do step out, lose everything, you realize that you never really did belong. You were in a system of acceptance and control. And when you speak the truth and pull that curtain back and be your authentic self, I feel like you really are helping people find real belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is so huge. Being your authentic self, losing everything, is where you are going to find true belonging, because before it's just a system of acceptance. And it's so powerful because, like you said, it is a basic human need. It really is.
It's strange though, because back when I did belong, I think I was happy at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I started to, see into things, I did realize, oh, wait a minute. It's like waking up.
Yes.
And realizing there's a whole part of me that is being concealed right now by me. And in order for me to be able to express that, I'm going to have to take some risks. So I look back on the days when I was in churches or ministries or whatever, and I was having a ball at the time, until I realized I was in the matrix.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So
me and my husband use that analogy all the time. It's like the Matrix. You are. I mean,
that's true.
It is so true. Because no one stays in these type of environments. A lot of people can ask us, like, how did you stay in ICOC for so long? There are articles there, and it's like, because I honestly, it did fulfill so many needs at the time, and I was having fun, and there were a lot of good things, but those good things are what kept me there and kept me not seeing like this whole side of myself that, like you said, was concealed. And it is like waking up out of the Matrix. So that's why I was laughing. I was like, yep.
Yeah, there's a scene in the Matrix where one of the people who got out of the Matrix and was with not Leo. What's his name? Is it Leo?
Is it Neo?
Neo, yeah.
Neo.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, he's in a restaurant making a deal with Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Remember? And he's drinking a fine red wine, and he's
Yep.
taking a big bite of juicy, medium rare steak. And he says, this is better. This
Yep.
he wanted to stay in the Matrix.
Yep.
Even though he was a nasty betrayer.
Yes.
Here's the thing, though. Like a lot of people, I hear from a lot of people every day, and on my Instagram and all that, and also privately, where they're ashamed that they were a part of a thing. And a lot of people, why did you stay in that so long? It's like saying to a woman, an abused woman, why did you stay in an abusive marriage so long? And there's a lot of shame, and you feel complicit, and weak, all those kinds of things, and duped. And most of the people I know that stayed, I know I stayed longer than I maybe should have for my own personal mental, spiritual, emotional health, is I did what I did to survive. Like I must have implicitly known that I couldn't just walk away at that time. There was too many things at risk. Like I have a wife and 3 children.
Right.
And my livelihood was there. I can't just, walk away without some preparation, or, I had to hide for some time. It's like women who want to leave, like they have to prepare, pack a suitcase and hide it. They have to have money somewhere. They have to have a place to go. They have to have support, a ride. Everything has to be in place, and then they make the decision and take the jump. But everything they do up to that point is survival.
Yeah.
And it's the same for you, Asha and Nikita, and for me. I stayed as long as I did because that's how I survived.
Yeah.
And I got out. I got out of abusive situations, and I can look back now and say, "Whoa, I'm glad I got out when I did."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that to me re-empowers us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you weren't weak, you didn't wait too long, you didn't, whatever. You survived and you made it, and look at you now, right? So for me, it's empowering.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a really, to use your word, empowering way to look at it, because I can feel sometimes like embarrassed or ashamed, or even as I reach out to different old friends that I like cut off because they did not join the organization. And that was, one of the things, like whether romantically or best friend, you're not to be yoked with unbelievers. Like don't be too close to anybody who's not in this organization. And so then reaching out to, make amends and apologize. And I'm so grateful that everyone has been so gracious.
Yeah.
But I feel it can feel very embarrassing. Like, oh my goodness. So
I'm not embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed. I was involved in some crazy stuff, and I'm not embarrassed. And I don't feel embarrassed for others who are in those situations or whatever. Are you aware of my Sophia series? I drew a whole bunch of series. Well, you showed one of them.
Yes.
With the sledgehammer. Yeah. One of them I drew where she's chained in a cellar, in a prison cellar, and there's signs all over the wall. A woman's place is in the home. I don't allow a woman to teach. Seen, not heard, all that stuff, right? And because that's very many women feel is that they're trapped in not just religion that's patriarchal, but a society that's patriarchal. Yeah. And I'll get some comments by men most often, like, what kind of a stupid woman would stay in that kind of a situation? Well, what would you do in that kind of a situation where your whole life has been made to be completely dependent on the men in that society or in that church or in that marriage or whatever? Like, what do you expect them to do? What do you expect that woman to do? what would you do if, all the money, all the, ownership, all the power and everything was in the man's hands? What do you expect her to do?
Wow.
And it's like the people who naively and stupidly say that, like the women in Iran, like, why do they submit to that? What would you do?
Right.
Everything is constructed to keep them down.
Yeah.
And so religion, in my opinion, is kind of mostly built that way to keep us there, and to keep us down. And that sounds cynical, but it's not necessarily with evil, malicious intent. I honestly do believe most religious leaders think they're doing the best thing for their people, but they underestimate the power of a person
Yeah.
to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And just to be clear, feel free to speak very freely. We say quite a few cynical things. So,
Well, I don't want to be cynical because, I know I am cynical at times, and that's me being me again. I don't wake up and say, I got to be positive today. Like for me, I'm going to be honest today.
Yep.
And so, people are like, you left the church, leave us alone. Like, why do you keep, harping about the church? It's because I care. There's a ton of people in the church who want the church to work.
Yeah.
I would love the church to work.
Yeah.
I think people should have the right and the privilege to gather together around common values and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But can we please do it in a healthy manner? That's all I'm asking.
That's all. And that, you're so right. Like that, the system is built to keep you oppressed. And I think I say that all the time. I have my conspiracy theory board behind me all the time, making all these connections. I'm losing it in Marco Polos to Nikita all the time and our other friends because I do see it. And, it's like, it's so hard. The church, especially ours, they were always calling for repentance, for change, love God harder, be more humble. But when it came to things that oppressed people, things that were shaming, things that, just were not healthy, it was like, oh, that'll take time. Oh, we've been talking about that. Oh, nobody's perfect. So why is it that we expect perfection over here, but not over here? And I saw a common thread. The things over here that are so hard to change are the things that keep people stuck, the things that keep people in their place, the things that keep people in a certain mindset and prevent them from living authentically and freely. The things that take your thumb off of us. Those are the things that I just don't know. We have to talk about that. And it's a pattern. And again, your cartoons help show me that pattern. I see it all over the place. So I completely agree with you. It is obvious if you want to look at it, if you want to see it.
Yeah.
I left the ministry in the church in 2010. I'd served the church as a professional clergy person for about 30 years. And before that, I was youth pastor and, all that volunteer stuff and everything. Got my BA in Bible and theology, got my master's in Bible, got my, started my PhD in Bible. Like, I dove into the deep end. I was completely, totally 100% committed, but I finally had to leave in 2010 because I knew I couldn't keep growing in the direction I felt I needed to without, first of all, without maybe damaging the church I was a pastor of. They were starting to get uncomfortable. And then I felt the only way I could do this is by breaking free.
Yeah.
And, and then once I did that, it took quite a few years to find my equilibrium again, because it's traumatic to leave the church.
It is. Yes.
Very traumatic. Even if it's, been abusive or whatever, it's still traumatic. And it took me a while to find my equilibrium. But the funny thing is, I'm my own boss. Like NakedPastor is what I do full time. And so a lot of people think, well, you're really free, but I'm really, it's one thing to get free. It's another thing to stay free. One thing to gain ground. It's another thing to keep that ground. And the pressure is on all the time to fall back in line or to conform. And, I'll give you an example. Like I have 10 books out already, and I'm working on another one. And always in the back of my mind, there's that voice. You would sell more books if you appealed to, more, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it's not abusive, but it can be coercive.
Yes.
So the pressure is always on. And even if you leave the ICOC, the pressure will always be there. The voices in the back of your head will always be there. They might dim and maybe become an echo eventually, but they'll always be there because they've been so ingrained, right? It's part of our DNA. So it's a very fascinating ride for me. I broke free in 2010, but those leeks and onions, there's something appealing about the leeks and onions.
Yeah.
And the temptation to go back,
Yeah, for sure. So I know earlier when we opened up, you were talking about how there's this very human need to belong. But then just now with what you're talking about, how there's kind of always this pull to get back in the box and to fall in line. And so I feel like there's this sweet spot, right? That's ideal. That's kind of somewhere in the middle where you can belong without necessarily being coerced. And so I guess I just wonder, for the people who reach out to you and they seem eager to try to find a new church quickly or a new home or to belong, they're like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. Have you found a good church? Do you know a good family of churches? What do you typically say to people who are in that space where they're like leaving one church that they have seen has been unhealthy or even abusive for them, and they're almost frantically seeking a new place to join?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it's really, really a hot one, because I think that's the number one pain point for most people who leave the church. The church has a corner on the market when it comes to community. And that's why I'm constantly challenging the church to try to do it in a healthy manner. It has a corner on the market. Like there's no other place. And I know it because I've tried other things when I left the church because I missed the community aspect. But I tried other things, different clubs or groups or whatever. Nothing matches what the church can offer. There's no other organization where you walk into and immediately you're handed a whole tray of friends and parents and babysitters, mechanics, and something to do every day of the week, almost. Somebody to take care of your kids spiritually growing up, Sunday school, youth group, young adults, blah, blah, blah. A place to find a partner, like it's just insane.
Yeah.
How well the church can provide the whole meal deal. People. And I looked for something similar when I left, or maybe I can get this part here and that part there. But there's something magical about being able to be your total self in one place and be loved by the same people consistently over the long term. There's another word for that, and that's called cults. Well, now, not necessarily, not all churches are cults, but there are so many similarities that I began to ask myself, now, wait a minute. I don't know anybody else outside the church who've experienced this. Because I know, because when I talk to people about it, they're like, what? Like the church did all that? Like, it's like it doesn't fit in their grid, right? And so I started to ask myself, and watching a lot of documentaries on cults and so on, it's like, maybe that wasn't normal.
Right.
Maybe that wasn't totally healthy, you know? And one of the big signs of that was when I left the ministry and Lisa and I left the church, my wife, Lisa, we didn't know how to make friends. And we're in our, how old were we? Yeah, we were in I was like 50-ish. It's like, I didn't know how to make friends.
Right.
And it was like a whole learning process and everything. So, so what I tell people is, first of all, analyze, okay, what was it that I liked so much about that? And was it really that great for me? Was it healthy? Watch some documentaries on cults and group, dynamics and all that kind of thing. Talk to a therapist, see, somebody who's familiar with religious trauma,
right?
Not necessarily a Christian therapist,
right?
And then learn how to make friends, and make some friends, and also appreciate the kind of relationships that you can form online.
Yeah,
because I've come to discover they're real.
Yeah.
Like Asha, we haven't engaged back and forth, I don't think, very much, but Nikita and I have a little bit. I consider already, Asha, I consider you a friend, Nikita a friend. And, if ever I think of a question and I think, oh, ICOC, I know a couple of people who are familiar with that, and I know I can come to you.
Yeah.
And other people. I have an online community called The Lasting Supper where we talk about all kinds of things and so on and so forth. So my needs are being met now.
Yep.
And when it comes to community and relationships and so on, Lisa and I have worked hard for years to build friendships, and now we have enough friends that we're busy enough, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a huge one. It's like because one of the things I'm going on and on. Is that okay?
That's good. Keep going.
I watched all these documentaries about people who were in cults and so on, and to a T, every one of them were like crying because they missed the intensity of intimacy and community and fellowship that they had there. But they all acknowledged that they were majorly abused, like anything from coercion to manipulation and control to physical assault, sexual assault, rape, that you name it. And yet they still missed that group dynamic. That's when my eyes were open. It's like,
wow.
I was in a very intense, intimate group, and we're being abused at the same time.
Yep.
So what is that? What is that about me that I'm attracted to that kind of a intense community experience, and we'll put up with a lot in order to have that, right? There's some questions I had to ask myself.
Wow.
And so that's just some of the things I suggest to people who are saying, do you go to church? What do you do? How do you replace it? All those kinds of things. That's how I respond.
Yeah, that is a really good response. I had another question kind of coupled with that. So people can see, okay, it's not great in here, but it reminds me kind of that phrase where it's like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Because something else that people will say is like, but oh my gosh, it's so scary out there, right? Because of course, in the church, one tactic to get you to stay in the safety of the community is you don't want to go to the world. You don't want to, go out there where there's drugs and, untrustworthy people and things like that. And so they just paint this picture that if you're not in this community, which again, as I'm saying it out loud, it screams cult. But so what kinds of things would you say to kind of comfort or encourage someone who knows that it's not great in here, but they're so terrified, I guess, of what could exist out in the world?
Yeah, there's a Shama Lion movie, the guy who did, oh, what's the name of the one where John Hurt was in it? And it's a
Mhm.
community out in the middle of woods or whatever, and he has monsters out and about, but they're people dressed as monsters in order to scare
Yes.
people and make them stay inside the community.
Hmm.
He did it because he loved them and cared for them and didn't want them to leave and get hurt. And so it's kind of like that.
Mm.
It, uh, it's once you get out there, you realize it's not all that you were told. But I think you have to go through some deconstruction first. So you need to go through questioning your beliefs and so on to the point where um, you start realizing maybe sin isn't sin, maybe backsliding isn't backsliding. Maybe the demons and uh, being led astray and all those things aren't what I was told they were. And
Hmm.
when you get to that point, when you start questioning all those things, then I think you might be ready to go out there and experience, the world. But
Mm.
making it sound like you're being thrown into Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not like the world isn't like that. I mean, parts of it maybe, but like it's like for me when I left the church, actually I met some really nice people out there
Yep.
and some wonderful events and you know um and so on, like, and it isn't what I was told.
Right. Yeah. Same. Like that was a big part of my deconstruction journey. As I
Yeah.
started to allow myself to think, I started to realize that I was surrounded by amazing people.
Hmm.
And I was so trained to see them as broken and they all need my help. And when I stopped having those thoughts and I started actually looking at, the fruit, that's what's always talked about in Christian circles. Look at a tree by its fruit. Um, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been in The Village. A few people put there, the movie's called The
Yeah,
Village.
that's it.
I've been surrounded by these fake monsters. And it was heartbreaking to think about all that I had missed out on, the ways I had closed myself off. And I found that in these places, I actually belong. They accepted me, you know. But anyway, I wanted to piggyback on that. Is absolutely true. Over exaggerating the fears of the world, I think, is a control tactic. Yes, it's a way people try to keep you safe, but at the end of the day, it's just not true. I want people to know that. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
In
Yeah.
2009, like I'd been struggling with the ministry and theology, and I was basically an evangelical and progressive evangelical all that time. And I I remember struggling with, okay, the Bible and theology and church tradition, and then this.
Hmm.
So for example, the LGBTQ reality and racism and all this stuff going on in the world. Um, and I couldn't reconcile it all. And I got to the point in 2009 when I was ready to throw in the towel and basically quit, like just to give up. I can't figure out how to reconcile all this. And then I had a moment where it all came together, where I just saw the oneness of all things and the oneness of all people. And it was a beautiful moment, and peace of mind came. The theological angst left
Wow.
and never came back. That was 14 years ago now. And I just experienced this great peace, and about all the theology stuff.
Hmm.
And so actually, you can put two and two together. I left the ministry in 2010. So you can see how that, started me towards that. And because I just started naively expressing what I saw and thinking other people might appreciate this as much as I did. But no, lo and behold. And I started getting calls from head office and so on that I needed to run my posts through them first and all that kind of thing. And I knew my time was up. And sure enough, a year later, I was gone. So, but that to me erased the fear of others.
Yeah.
And the thought that we're separate and somehow I need to get them on board, or that, I'm better and all this, I'm saved, you're not, all that binary thinking was gone.
Yes.
And it was such a beautiful and peaceful, and is such a beautiful and peaceful place. And so, and then you start seeing through all of the facades that religion puts up to make you think that this is where it's at.
Yeah.
We're in and they're out. And when you see through that, though, it'll never work for you again once you see that.
Yes.
But not only do you realize these are my brothers and sisters out there, and I'm connected to them on a deep and fundamental level that I might not understand, but I know, and my fear is gone. I'm no longer afraid. And the sense of in and out and better and worse and sacred and secular and holy and unholy and all that that's all gone. And so when you have that mentality, going out in the world doesn't really work anymore.
Right.
You're just being a citizen of the universe.
Yep.
To me, that's where it's at.
Yeah. And so you talk about like this, like the fear of going out, and even you referenced expressing yourself and the things that you're observing, and not being able to really sit comfortably with binary thinking. I think a thread that ties kind of each of these together is being able to listen to your own intuition and like allowing yourself to even hear your voice. And what I've seen both through our experience in the ICOC, but then also, as I begin to allow myself to be more of a global, universal citizen and hear voices from all these other evangelical, ex-evangelical spaces and read the comments of people's experiences, that we've all been fed a message similar to the heart is deceitful above all things, who can understand? Or there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. And it's all this message of basically saying, you can't trust your own mind, so you need to listen to what we tell you to think. So I guess, how would you describe your process or your experience of learning to trust your own discernment and intuition? Because so many of us are trained to fear and distrust that.
Yeah, wow. That's such a really good question. And I talk about this a lot, trusting your gut.
Yeah.
You do. It's one of the things I love about your page, because especially as a woman, it's like, oh, you're too upset. You better not share that unless you feel that for 2 more weeks, or you didn't like that. You just need to be more grateful. And so I've been learning how to really like, no, actually, there's a reason I don't like this.
Yes.
Yeah. I did an interesting exercise way back when I was studying my master's, and I took a pastoral education course, clinical pastoral education course. So basically I lived in a hospital for 6 months and walked around with the chaplain and took courses and all this kind of thing. And one of the things he did was an emotional intelligence exercise where we were tested on how well we could name our emotions, or how well we could name an emotion on somebody's face, or name an emotion somebody was feeling by what they were saying. And I was really surprised at how poorly we did. Like I was just a young man. I might have been 24, 25 years old at the time. But emotional intelligence, and of course, I grew up in a very authoritarian home, and I grew up in a very authoritarian kind of religion, Pentecostal and Baptist, and so on. And like you said, like lean not on your own understanding, and don't trust your heart, and don't trust your feelings, and all this kind of thing. And so we're basically trained to be emotionally unintelligent, and to rely upon and depend upon our leaders to tell us how to feel and what to think and how to behave even. And I actually had, later on in my ministry, I actually had people sit down across from my pastor's desk and say, we pay you to tell us what to believe. And so that, I'm going way back, but that whole thing about not understanding or not trusting our gut was, we were trained. And so we can start small, and just start noticing when your stomach flips, or when you feel a butterfly, or when you feel your heart sink, or when you start shaking in the presence of somebody, or whatever it is. Like, just notice those things, and trust it. Some kind of a survival mechanism has kicked into place, and it might be operating at a subconscious level, but your body is trying to tell you something. And so we have to start training ourselves to listen to our bodies, start listening to our gut, like feel our gut, and say, okay, why is my stomach turning right now? Like, what's going on? Or why is my heart beating faster? Or, why am I feeling tension right here? This is where I feel I get really, when I'm really nervous about something, usually in the presence of a past abuser or something like that, I'll feel it right here. And I'm like, okay, something's happening. What's going on? And you don't need to understand and know right now. Just recognize, okay, I'm feeling that feeling right now, and then meditate on it. Just think about it. Write in your journal, figure it out. And eventually you'll get to the point where, like me, when I got that phone call, let's say, from head office saying, we'd like you to run all your posts for us first, and that gut feeling came, this is them trying to control me. I knew immediately, because I trained myself, that somebody was trying to put me back in shackles. I knew it immediately. But that took a while. Like, I let people put me in shackles before, because I was like, that must be good for me. They know better than I do.
Right.
I'm just an ignorant, sheep, and they're the shepherd and whatever. Right. But I got to the point where, like, wait a minute, I'm not going to fall for that now anymore. And so you can train yourself. I can smell control, manipulation, or shaming, or guilting, or abuse a mile away now. But that took some training. And basically, it's just me noticing my own body, right? And not saying it's Satan or, it's whatever. It's me feeling something, and it's very valid, and to listen to that.
Yeah. That's huge. That was very huge for me. I'm sure for Nikita too. I think we come from a church where letting someone control you was very overt and considered godly. Those were the people who actually were the example, the shining example.
Humility.
It was all about humility. And someone put this here. I'm just being prideful. If you did fight back and say you're trying to control me, it was like, well, yeah, because you're being prideful, and a humble person listens to advice. A godly person wants to listen to their leaders. The Bible says not to be a burden to your leaders. And so it was an expectation to not make decisions on your own. So it's like the idea of doing something because you want to do it was demonized in our environment. I remember it was during the pandemic, and this is where I'm starting to think to myself, I think I'm a grown-up. I think that I can make decisions for myself. And we had bought this house that I hated, and we moved from it. I bought it because it would be better for the church. And so I had like 2 living rooms, and I had this bigger living room space, and I had no furniture to put in it. And I was like, I have a job. I make money. I can order some couches. And that I'm just sharing this with you for you to understand. For our audience, this is how deep the control went. And I thought, if I buy these couches, that is almost $1,000. I have $1,000, but is there something else I can be doing with it? Usually decisions like this, you run past people. And I bought the couches. I hit the button on Amazon and I just sat down in the other living room with the couch, and I just waited for something bad to happen. Like, that's how I like sat there thinking something bad is going to happen to me because I hit this button and no one approved this. It is wild to think back on. So yeah, it's just crazy. I don't know what you would say to someone who comes from a background where like being controlled is like, well, yeah, we're just being humble. I don't know what you're talking about. You're so rebellious now, Asha. What would you say to somebody coming from that type of background?
What's wrong with being rebellious?
Nice.
Rebellion it can be a good thing. So I have a lot of people assume I'm anti-authority, but I'm not. I've had many pastors in my life. I've had many spiritual directors. I've gone to many a guru, many a master, many a therapist, many a coach, but I chose them. I started the relationship and I ended the relationship each and every time. I chose. That's so I can, with being fully spiritually independent, submit myself to the authority of another. Like, so for example, I, in my spiritual life or in my business life or in my relationship life or, whatever kind of life, my money life, I had so much issues with money after I left the ministry. I needed to talk to somebody who didn't. And so I submitted to their wisdom. But when we were done, we were done. I was like, thanks very much. I'm moving on. And so the thing that's wrong with often with church authority is that it's almost like master-slave relationship. And I'm sorry, is that inappropriate? Speaking
No.
Not
at all.
But it's very much like that, where you don't have a choice. It's me or Satan.
Yes.
And I represent God. I am God in the flesh for you. And so you should submit to me. And if you're like, you know what, I find you too controlling, I'm going to go now. And if I find another pastor who isn't controlling, I'll willingly submit myself to them and their teaching. But Jezebel, that's Jezebel. Right?
Right.
So, but that's, I think, how spiritual independence works. I think the church should be a place where people are encouraged to be spiritually independent.
Yeah.
One of the best pictures I saw of a shepherd, and I think it was in Angola or somewhere in the mountains of Angola, and it showed this shepherd, and he was with his flock of sheep, and he was following them.
Wow.
And I know a person who was a shepherd, and basically you let the sheep loose, and you just hang out with them, and you just follow along because they'll find the grass.
Wow.
And they'll eat the grass, and you just follow them wherever they go. and they'll find the grass. You steer them away from danger, or protect them from danger. Yeah, they'll smell the water long before you see it.
Wow.
And, and so that to me is the idea of a pastor,
Oh, that's so
which is
beautiful.
the word for
Yeah.
shepherd, is that people can find their food. They'll find their
Yeah.
food. And some of it might be from you and some of it might be from somebody else. Don't worry about it. You're just there to just oversee and help community happen in a healthy way. And that to me is an ideal picture of a pastor. And I wish there were more of those, don't you?
Right.
Yes, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful and refreshing. I've actually never heard that, but it makes
No.
so much sense.
Yeah.
Through that mindset, how they lead from the back, and then how you said that you choose a relationship. If you find someone and you desire to learn from them and they're not controlling, that you will choose to enter that relationship, and you will also choose when the relationship is over. Thank you very much. I've learned what I need to learn. I'm going to move on. One thing that I'm curious to hear about, because you kind of touch on it here or there on your feed, at least from what I've seen, but I'm like, oh, I really want to know more, is your thoughts surrounding people who position themselves as deconstruction gurus and deconstruction experts, and who are trying to lead people on how they should deconstruct their own faith. Because the content that I've seen from you about this topic, there always seems just to be just a touch of angst, just a touch of shade. And I'm like, I really want to hear more.
Oh boy. I have a saying. I say there's only one way to deconstruct, and that's your way. So there's no proper way to deconstruct. And deconstruction, I first started using the word way back in 2006. I was reading philosophy, Derrida, Jacques Derrida, the French philosopher. He actually coined the word deconstruction in French, translated into deconstruction in English. But when that word really captured what I was feeling about my beliefs and my faith. And so I started using it in reference to my belief and faith. And I had people saying, you sound like a deconstructionist. And I took it as a compliment rather than an insult. And then I started making cartoons about deconstruction. And then in 2012, I formed my online community, The Lasting Supper, which is all about deconstruction and so on. But, and I'm not here to promote that. I'm just mentioning that. But so for me, deconstruction is something that's always been there. We're just naming it this now. Most people are naming it this now. And it's just questioning your beliefs. It's just spiritual growth one-on-one. That's all it is. It's nothing new. Everybody has questioned their beliefs all down through history. Everybody's questioned their faith all down through history. But you had a choice. Either you shut up about it and stay in the pew, or you started talking about it and risk expulsion, excommunication, right? That's the only two choices. And it's that way today as well. But people are willing to be excommunicated now. People don't care as much about belonging to a church if it's going to ruin their lives. So deconstruction's always been there. But, when I started talking about it 2006, 2008, 2010, 2012, full on, everybody's talking about it now. And people are saying it's a bad thing. It's taking people away from God. It's taking people away from the church. Or if you do deconstruct, you need to come back, as sort of like you're taking a sinful vacation of some kind. And all kinds of things. People are trying to turn it into a movement. People are trying to become, and I've seen this, where people are trying to become like the spearhead of a movement, the leaders of a movement. And for me, that all spells disaster. Like just, don't do that. This is just people growing spiritually at their own pace. And for me, I don't care where you end up. I don't care if you become an even better believer or a really good atheist. I don't care. Because for me, remember, we're all one at a deep and fundamental level. It's and these are just a bunch of thoughts on the surface. That's not what binds us together. It's love that binds us together, not compatibility of beliefs. And so, I do throw a little bit of shade sometime that people are trying to make this a thing. It's nothing new. And I don't, I've seen other movements before, like the emergent movement and other progressive movements, and people vie for leadership and authority and all that, and they just implode. And, people still continue growing at their own pace. Movements come and go, ideas come and go, but people will continue to find out ways to be spiritually independent. And I'm here for them. Like, that's what I do. I'm just here to help you on your path, whatever that means. Like you both are doing. We're just here to support you, whatever direction you're going in. I trust you. You're at the wheel, and I'm just going to be here if you need me, kind of thing. And I think that's what's more needed these days, rather than leaders or gurus or whatever, experts. I think it puts a bad light on deconstruction, which is normalized by now. And it should be normalized, because it's a normal process, a normal spiritual process in the spiritual life of everybody, and a necessary one. So, yeah. Do you see that out there, where there's people vying for authority and to be the voice and, all that kind of thing?
Well, I'm seeing it more so in religious spaces.
Yes.
Church is trying to get ahead of what deconstructors are exposing, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, people are being exposed, and we're in this day and age where we have social media. And like you mentioned earlier, we have online community. We have people to validate our experiences, tell us we're not crazy. People didn't have that before. They didn't have that before. They just had to deconstruct, be separated, excommunicated, and try to figure out life again. And now people are being validated. People are seeing themselves in your cartoons and in other people's posts. And what I'm seeing is a lot of churches trying to get ahead of that and say, we're different. We're so different. We're even going to talk about deconstruction. The church we were a part of, actually, over this summer, I think, are having a class about how to deconstruct the right way. And it just makes it sound safe. Like, we totally are for deconstruction. We just want you to do it the right way. And I'm like, oh my goodness. One thing I've seen is online, and I felt like this is a good thing, but again, it can implode. It's a Christianity called unfundamentalist Christianity. And I'm like, can you really coin that term? That's just people finding their own way, being on their own journey. Because it's really love that connects us. But even so, that's what I've been seeing. It's like we are starting this being, instead of fundamentalists, we're unfundamental, but we lead it. And so I'm like, it looks good, but I'm a little suspicious of it. So yeah, I've been seeing that.
I try to practice that kind of open space, safe space, where people are free to come and go. They're free to question their beliefs. They're free to be spiritually independent. That to me is a challenge. How can I be free without violating Nikita's freedom?
Right.
And how can Asha be free without violating mine, and so on? I think that is the burning question on how community should work. And so I want people to be completely and totally free. And how do we do that in community? That to me is a burning question and an exciting one. And I tried to do that in the local church community that I was the pastor of up the road. Chaos.
Yeah.
But man, it was fun. It was creative chaos. It was incredible. And to this day, I have people say, you spoiled us for church. That was amazing. Like, it wasn't me though. It was just everybody being everybody. So it was chaos. But you see,
I love it.
Pastors and churches don't like chaos. It's difficult. And so order is what works best in a church, and authority, and elders and et cetera, et cetera. And so to me, I try to practice that online as well, that it's open, it's a safe space for people, and you're free to be spiritually independent, whichever way you're going. And we just learn to respect one another. And I'm experimenting on how to be free without violating anybody's freedom, and they're trying to learn how to be free without violating mine. It's fun. That's what life is. That's what marriage is.
Yes.
I'm trying to be free as the husband, and Lisa's trying to be free as the wife, and we're trying to figure out how to be free together, and it makes for an exciting relationship, right? So and not normal, but very romantic,
Yeah.
So that, I think, is how community can work and should work. So there's no right way. There's no one way. Homogeneity sucks. Diversity rocks.
Yes.
And so the more diverse a community is, and is able to hold that diversity together, that to me is one of the healthiest. I keep missing those little comments. And because I have a hard time talking and reading at the same time.
It's all good.
But yeah, so that to me is really exciting. And if we can figure that. So for me, though, where I draw the line, though, is if you come in and your freedom does violate another person or even harms another person, then that's where I draw the line. You can't do that.
Right.
It's authenticity with accountability. If you believe that being trans is a sin and that you're going to hell and so on, you can't participate in a diverse community where there are trans people.
Right.
You're the one who is actually excluding yourself and not participating in the oneness of all things.
Wow.
And so that to me is where I do draw the line. If other people are being harmed, somebody's freedom is being violated, and somebody's over exercising and abusing their power.
Yep. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes it's comments that pop up that support what you're saying and people are really feeling it. And I just want to put it on the screen for future. So no need to feel, anxious about responding to all of them. But
did I answer a question or did I let one fly?
No, it's all been great. You've answered and then some. And then as I was listening to you, I was like, I feel like, and I don't think you have this merch already, but there should definitely be some like diversity rocks, mugs, and t-shirts, and then also authenticity with accountability. Sweatshirts.
I don't have that, so.
Yeah, those are amazing.
It's funny, isn't it, how, I started blogging and writing as a typical pastor would with a bunch of words. And then, once in a while I'd share one of my paintings. And you have one of the paintings there in the background. But I started trying cartooning to see how that would go over, because I love a really good cartoon, like Far Side or a New Yorker cartoon for me is the gold standard, of course. And my cartoons took off, but it's amazing to me. That's how people get to know about me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the message behind them that are impacting people. Like, so when I'm talking about freedom or diversity or unity or inclusivity or feminism or whatever it is I'm talking about through the cartoon, that's what really is pulling us together. So for me, it's really exciting that, people don't have to, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I think it's really true sometimes, where people see my cartoon and it's in a split second, and they didn't have to read 1,000 words and they get the point.
Right. Yeah.
So to me, it's very powerful because it's so fast and effective.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect segue. I cannot believe how fast time is flying, but I kind of can, because you know what they say, time flies when you're having fun. But I did, before we, went our separate ways for today, wanted to put a couple of different pieces of yours up on the screen and have a chat about them. One, just to be able to hear the artist's perspective, but then two, to expose our community more to, who you are and what you know, are bringing into the world. So let's see here. No, that's not right. I'm learning how to, my goodness gracious. Where's all of us? There we go. Okay, so this first one, no one warned me how lonely freedom can be. Wow. David, I guess what inspired you to create this one?
Well, because I experienced loneliness. I mean, I when I was in the church, I was surrounded by people all the time. There was a lot of people, and very busy. And when I left the church, I, like so many other people who leave the church, experienced loneliness at a deep level. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with being lonely. It's a human emotion, right. Totally valid. And I'm alone a lot. My wife is a nurse. She works 42 hours a week. Wait, more than that. Anyway, a lot. And so I'm alone a lot. Empty nest. I do have my dog, but and so I experience loneliness, but I'm free. And when I look back, there were many times I wasn't free and I was surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And I prefer this now. I prefer being that guy, having his coffee, looking out the window at the river and enjoying my freedom. Now, it's not that there aren't people in my lives. Like, look, you and I, you guys and I've been together almost 1.5 hours and I'm having a ball. I don't know about you, but
yes,
you know, I'm enjoying the time we're spending together. And for me, this is very real. Sure, I'd prefer to be in your living room and you in mine, but this works. And, but yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people experience with their deconstruction is loneliness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate there. And as I mentioned earlier, have gotten quite a few messages of people saying like, man, I want to leave, but I'm just so scared of losing all my friends. But to that, it is easy to say and see like, well, if you deciding not to attend these services means that your friends are going to disappear, are you truly free? Are they truly your friends? Is this truly a place of belonging? And being able to, you know, I think like you said, work some more in your deconstruction to really align your beliefs with kind of the reality of the situation. So even when people reach out to me and ask, oh, how have you been? It's such a weird, like double-sided coin because I'm like, well, because of the way my eyes are opening, there are some pretty major things in my life that are really shaken up right now, but I've never felt so centered and empowered inside of myself. Usually it's been everything in my life is kind of stable, but I don't feel secure in myself. But now, even though things can be rocky in different areas, it's very nice to feel authentic and centered and free. That whatever is happening, it's because I'm choosing it. So yeah, I've been enjoying that.
You know, wouldn't it be great if you could be that in a community? That's what I fight for. That's what I argue for.
Yeah.
And I did have that for a while locally until, you know, others noticed and there were complaints and, you know, and then online I was doing the same thing. And then, you know, it's very unorthodox and everything. But what if the church did embrace people growing through all the stages of their spiritual life rather than up until adolescence when they start rebelling and asking questions and questioning authority anyway? Well, what if they kept their arms open and said, hey, go for it. You continue growing and we're here for you. Wouldn't that be amazing? And so that's what I keep arguing for. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like I can be the most cynical because I'm like, yeah, why don't they? What is the benefit of them continuing to promote this way of life? It's not working. It's not working.
I have a funny story.
Yes.
When I took over the church that I was the became the pastor of the last church I pastored, the previous pastor was more conservative than I, and he preached tithing like religiously, and the church had amazing offerings, and so I never supported tithing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in generosity, and I believe people can be generous. And so for those of your people who might not know, tithing is when you give 10% of your income.
Oh, yeah, they know.
Okay. And then we've got our offerings. You got to have your tithes and then your real offerings, and then your, anyway. So the first, and I cleared it with the leadership team and everything. I wanted to say, look, I'm not preaching tithing. I want to preach generosity.
Mm.
And the next Sunday, our offerings went down 60%.
Nice.
And because of that, we lost some staff, we lost this, we lost that, and eventually the church split.
Wow.
Because the previous pastor interfered, but that's why control works better in a church than freedom.
Yep, that's that. I believe that all.
There's
100%.
money.
Yes. That's what it comes down to. And I know people don't like when I say that. I'm glad you said it.
I mean, it's true. I was a pastor. I preached for over 30 years. And I know this from experience that people want to be browbeaten. Many people want to be preached at.
Mm-hmm.
They love fire and brimstone, hellfire preaching. People love it. There's a lot of people. No, I'm not saying everybody. I'm generalizing, please.
Right.
I'm generalizing. But people, when you grow up where shame is a good feeling, and when guilt is a good feeling, make them feel ashamed and guilty as you possibly can.
Yeah.
The money will roll in.
Wow.
And I know that from experience. And, I remember, well, I could go on. You have another image?
Yes, I have quite a few. Or not quite a few. I think 4 more. But yeah, I get that. Okay, so here we
This
go.
is amazing. Yeah.
Next. Oh, there we go. And this one is a woman looking at a map, and the title says "Your Map Through Deconstruction."
I love it.
Yeah, and I chose this one again just because Asha and I started this series. And then we start getting all of these questions on our wall, question in our DMs, questions in person, questions via text message. Where do you go? What should I do? How should I look at the scriptures now? And I'm like, whoa. That's actually up to you to decide. And so it's cool because we see a lot of that, echoed on your page. So yes, what would you like to say about this piece?
I remember when I first learned to drive. I learned a stick drive, and my dad was a cop, and man, I was very nervous, and there was a lot of yelling and a lot of frustration, and but like at some point I had to take the wheel and drive myself.
Wow.
I would make mistakes. I would grind the gears. I would brake too soon. I would roll backwards. I would go over the line. I would parallel park lousily or whatever, right? But I'm a good driver now. It took some time, but I became a good driver. And it's just like that with your spiritual independence. It takes a while to say, okay, I can trust myself to be the captain of my own ship, the master of my own destiny, because I must. That's what adults do. When adults go into the big buffet Sunday after church, you don't need your mom and dad there to tell you what to put on your plate. You know by now what you want to put on your plate.
Yeah.
Some of it'll be healthy, and some of it'll be a treat, and some of it'll be lean, and some of it'll be fat. But
Yeah.
you get to decide how to eat, and you get to decide what to eat spiritually too, what your spiritual food will be, and who will feed it to you. So yeah, that's what that means. There's no map.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that. All right, here we go. This,
Yeah.
I think, is one of my favorites.
Love it.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. It's like I'm laughing, but at the same time, I can feel tears welling up in my and so for anyone who's not familiar yet with his platform, there are quite a few versions of this image where the person that Jesus is bestowing his blessing upon takes on different physical features. And I love that because you can, there's so many options for someone to be able to see themselves. And so obviously this one resonates with me. She's a woman of color. And I love that Jesus is calling her a badass.
Yeah.
That it's like, yeah, Jesus said badass. And there's another piece that you have as well, where Jesus is teaching a young woman how to flip somebody off. like this. And I love it.
Yeah.
Flip the table like this. Yeah.
I will open
He's lifting up her finger and saying like this. Yeah.
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, the reason there's different iterations of this one is because people would write me and say, could you please, like, because I do commission work, they say, could you please do this same one, but with my wife?
Wow.
And so they'll give me a picture of their wife, and I'll put their wife in there, getting the badass blessing. So, but they're all women. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Yeah. Badass women. I know a lot of badass women, and there's nothing that provokes and upsets the patriarchy more than a badass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I love this. I was actually reconnecting with someone, a woman who used to be part of our church in our area. And she has always been more spunky, and I've watched her life unfold from afar on social media. And I brought up to her, like, man, it is so cool to watch all of these women get their voices back. And even for me to find my voice. Because you can think the women who are sassier or whatever in that environment, like, oh, okay, cool. But then they leave and you really watch them set the world on fire, or you see what they really want to wear, what they feel good in, or the different things that they speak out about. And it's like, whoa, there was so much fire inside of this person for different causes or different things, their talents and passions. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's just so cool to see that there is, in one way or another, a badass that really is, hidden underneath all the patriarchy and community guidelines. So I love that.
Yeah, I love it too. Yeah, I love those memes where it shows a badass woman and it says 200 years ago, this woman would have been burned at the stake for being a witch.
Yes, definitely.
I think that's probably true.
Yes,
So.
absolutely.
Okay, let's see. Okay, this one. So I know I sent you one, a person in chains, but I was going over your profile again this morning. I was like, no, I'm going to trade it out for this one. So people love to quote, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, but I've never seen it portrayed this way, that the Bible is the weapon that, has been formed against us.
Sometimes I do draw a good cartoon. I like this one, but the Bible is used against me more than it's used for me. Every time. And there's people who would say, well, there's reason for that. But it's constantly being used to belittle me, correct me, shame me, guilt me, make me afraid, etc. It's just, and so this is sort of a proclamation I am making. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Like I said, I grew up in the Bible. I still have my Bible from when I was a teenager. It was the interlinear New Testament, and it's underlined in all kinds of colors and writing in the margin and everything. I was crazy about the Bible. And those verses are in there, right?
Yeah.
They're with me. And there's a lot of verses that still ring true. And this is one of them. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Because I feel I'm doing good work. I think you are doing good work. And there will be weapons formed against us.
Yeah.
If we want to keep doing the work, like Barack Obama said in Chicago, he said, it's about the work. It's about the work. No matter how many times he was attacked, it's about the work. And that's what I keep telling myself. It's about the work. It's not about me. It's about so these weapons that are formed against me, they're not going to work.
Nope.
All right. Then the last one, I think. This one, I think, is this your most famous one?
Yeah. It is one of my most famous. There's one of just Jesus flipping the table.
Okay.
But this one is actually the cover of my new book.
I love it.
Flip It Like This is the name of the book. It's my collection of best of cartoons. And there it is.
Yeah.
In color.
Yeah.
Yes. It's I had a woman actually ask me if I could draw this for her as a commission. She wanted me to do a picture of Jesus teaching her how to flip a table. Now, I am sure she did not need to be taught, but she liked the idea of Jesus showing her how to flip the table.
Right.
This picture also upsets a lot of people because Jesus has brown skin. And so it's offensive on many levels.
Sorry. I just think it's so funny that brown skin is so offensive.
Flipping tables,
really,
brown skin.
I can't believe it. Yeah, I just can't believe it. I can't believe the world out there right now.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I just think it's so great because, and it's a post you put out either yesterday or today, and it's people like praising the Bible.
That's today.
And there's today. So I'm not a fake fan. I really do follow you. And so just the discussion in the comments is so rich, and where people are distinguishing between like Jesus and the Bible and all these things, and how it's like, no, well, Jesus always comes and says, like, you guys read that it was said, but then he comes and does the exact opposite. And when he does that, it upsets people. And he's trying to teach them how to flip tables. He's trying to teach them how to, show their middle finger to the world and to these oppressive establishments. And so I just love how you said earlier, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, that you can look at this and you can see his heart, where it's like, come on, everybody, all together now.
It is amazing. That's what I think too when I look at that. Yep.
Yeah, and in this one, like this image, for me, the Jesus overturning the tables, whether it's a historic event or not, and we know it can be interpreted anti-Semitically. For me, it's an Old Testament prophet falls into the Old Testament prophet kind of tradition, the Hebrew prophet tradition of where the Hebrew prophets were enraged by the exploitation of the poor and the marginalized and the stranger and the alien and so on. And so that's what this story represents for me, whether it was a historical event or not. For me, that's what I take that story to mean, is justice against the exploitation of the marginalized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is happening a lot, and it seems to be on the increase in some places.
Oh, definitely.
I'm speaking from Canada. So
you are very lucky to be in Canada. So,
although we have our issues, of course, but like every other country, I think conservatism, like ultra fundamentalist kind of conservatism, alt-right conservatism, is a reaction to progress. So I do think, like Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of justice is long, but oh my God, is it ever long? And I think this alt-right conservatism is a reaction to that. It's like progress is the gas pedal and conservatism is the brake, and they're just hammering on the brakes and actually are trying to get it in reverse.
Yeah.
And in some ways are succeeding. So images like Flip It Like This, I think that's why it's so popular right now.
Yeah, for sure. And people even get this image and others of your artwork tattooed on them, which I think is such a high form of praise. It's so cool.
Yeah.
But I just think it speaks to the depth of the work that you're doing and how deeply it resonates. So that's just really, really beautiful. And I know I'm just so grateful for you in this season of life. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would, like to say or really leave people with? And of course, after that, we'll have you share all the places they can find you and even talking about the details of how they can get your books or your merch or commit, just all the things. Please tell people how they can connect with you. But before we do that, I just am wondering if there's anything about deconstruction, intuition, trusting your gut, life after losing this ready-made community that you hadn't said that you would really like to say to people.
So with deconstruction, here's a little bit of I hardly ever give advice, but here's a little bit of advice. It's like in the Matrix where Neo offers the blue or the red pill, and it depends on how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. For me, deconstruction is don't set a goal, just start questioning your beliefs, and don't be shocked or dismayed or afraid about how far the rabbit hole you might go down and how thorough your questions might become, even to the very foundations of what you thought, because that is what deconstruction does. If you continue on that path where it takes you to a place where you just begin to question everything. And honestly, just fasten your seatbelt, enjoy the ride, maybe wear a helmet, but it just enjoy it. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to arrive to. You're already there. Everything's perfect. You're perfect. And just enjoy that. This is a time of discovery, and it's wonderful because that whole anxiety-driven need to know the truth so that it shall set you free so that you can get to heaven is gone. Don't worry about that anymore. Now it's just you're out in the wilderness enjoying, discovering new things. And so just enjoy the ride. That's my advice.
I love that.
Oh, and where you can find me, my base camp is NakedPastor.com. And I'm Naked Pastor all across all social media. I'm everywhere. So just look for Naked Pastor. And I'm really good at responding to people who reach out to me. I answer emails and messages, and I try all the comments. I'm a busy man, but I enjoy it. That's why I do it. So thank you for having me on. You two are wonderful. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. We really, really enjoyed this. So grateful for you taking the time to spend with us. Yeah. I can't wait to see what the comments are going to say later, what DMs we're going to get, because I just know that this is going to be so beneficial for so many. It's been healing for me, and I definitely look forward to staying in touch.
Well,
absolutely.
Thanks so much, Nikita and Asha. If there's anything that comes up that you want to ask me or pass on to me, feel free.
Yes, for sure. All right, guys. Until next time, you know where to find us. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.